the kingdom of the setting sun in the heart of the golden desert. Between the rivers that once birthed empires, there stood a kingdom of unmatched beauty. Its towers pierced the heavens, its gardens bloomed beneath the moon, and its people sang of peace and love. Yet peace, like the mirage, is fragile. King Shahryar, ruler of all lands, from the Sapphire Sea to the Valley of Winds, was known as a man of great wisdom and might. But even kings are not immune to the poison of betrayal. The betrayal one night, under the veil of perfumed darkness, Shahryar's heart was shattered. His beloved queen, the rose of his soul, had fallen into the arms of another. He did not rage, he did not cry, he simply stood, watching the moonlight spill upon the marble floor like blood, and whispered to himself, "If love is false, then all hearts are false. If one woman can betray, then all women are born of deceit." That night, the queen was executed, and from that night forth, every dawn would drink the blood of the innocent. The curse, the king's madness, grew like fire in the wind. Each night, he took a new bride. Each morning, he ended her life. Fear spread through the kingdom like a shadow across the dunes. The sound of wedding drums became a dirge. Fathers wept, mothers cursed the heavens. The kingdom that once sang now slept in silence. Its only music, the footsteps of death, the whisper of fate. But fate, that ancient weaver of destinies, had not abandoned the land. In the house of the Grand Vizier lived two sisters, Dunyazad the Gentle One, and Scheherazade, whose mind was like 1,000 stars. She had read every scroll, every poem, every tale of jinn and kings and wanderers. And one night, as the moon rose like a blade, she said, "Father, let me be the next bride of the king." The vizier fell to his knees, horrified. "Child of my heart, do not speak such madness. You know his curse." Scheherazade smiled softly. "Yes, father. But within a story lies the power to tame even the storm of a king." The night of the first story. And so, the next evening, she was taken to the king's chamber. She bowed her head, her heart steady as the desert wind, as the stars burned high above the domes of the palace. She began to speak, her voice like the hush of dawn. "O King of Time, if thou wilt grant me but this night, I shall tell thee a tale that shall ease thy heart and calm thy fury." And as she spoke, the king listened. The night grew deep, the moon sailed across the heavens. And when the first light of dawn kissed the sky, Scheherazade paused and said, "But O my king, the rest of the tale must wait until tomorrow, for the morning is near." For the first time in many moons, the king did not call for an execution. He whispered, "Tomorrow you shall finish your tale." And so began the 1,000 nights and one, 1,000 tales to save 1,000 lives. 1,000 lights to break the curse of one heart. Welcome back to my channel. This channel specializes in writing about epic tales and myths from around the world. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help me out. Today, we will come to a new series titled 1001 Nights. And the first story I want to share with you is titled The Curse of King Shahryar, Redemption and the City of Stars. Here is the detailed content. Chapter 1. The Kingdom of the Two Brothers in the heart of the ancient East, where the sands whispered secrets of eternity and caravans carried dreams upon their weary backs. There stood two great kingdoms side by side, twin jewels beneath the gaze of heaven. The elder realm was ruled by King Shahryar, a man of might and wisdom, whose justice was said to balance the scales of the world. To the east stretched the land of King Shah Zaman, his beloved brother, whose heart burned with valor and pride. The two brothers were born of the same royal blood, raised beneath the same canopy of stars. As children, they hunted together across the green plains that kissed the desert's edge. They sparred with wooden swords, shared bread and laughter, and swore eternal loyalty to one another. The court poets often sang, "No bond is truer than that of Shahryar and Shah Zaman, twin flames lit by destiny's own hand. Their kingdoms flourished beneath their reigns. Marble palaces shimmered under the sun. Gardens bloomed with roses the color of dawn. And the call to prayer echoed from the minarets like the heartbeat of heaven itself. Trade caravans brought gold, silks, and spices from distant horizons. And at night, the twin kings would meet at the borders of their realms, sharing counsel, dreams, and the wisdom of the stars. But as all stories of men go, fate had already begun to weave the first thread of sorrow. One year, Shah Zaman resolved to visit his elder brother. He prepared a grand caravan filled with gifts, 100 camels laden with treasures, jewels that glittered like fire, and fine fabrics from the markets of Samarkand. The people cheered as he set out from his gates, the banners of his house fluttering like wings of crimson and gold. Yet on the eve of his departure, Shah Zaman remembered a small, forgotten box in his private chambers, a gift meant for Shahryar alone. He returned quietly, without his guards or servants, to retrieve it. And there, within the moonlit silence of his palace, his eyes fell upon a sight that shattered the foundation of his soul. His queen, his beloved companion, was entwined in the arms of a servant. Their laughter soft, their betrayal bright as a dagger's edge. For a heartbeat, the world ceased to turn. The lamps flickered. The night itself seemed to recoil. Shah Zaman's hands trembled, then clenched around the hilt of his sword. He did not speak, nor cry out. He only stepped forward, and with the cold swiftness of judgment, he struck them both down. When dawn rose, it shone upon a man who had died and been reborn in the ashes of betrayal. He left his palace with no word to his people, his heart hollow, his gaze like winter glass. By the time Shah Zaman reached his brother's realm, the once vibrant prince had become a shadow of himself. King Shahryar welcomed him with open arms, with music and feasts that lasted for 7 nights. But though the tables were heavy with fruits and wine, Shah Zaman touched neither. The courtiers whispered among themselves. The king grew troubled. "What sorrow clouds your eyes, my brother?" Shahryar asked on the final night. Shah Zaman smiled faintly, a smile that carried no warmth. "Nothing, my brother. Only the memory of a dream that turned to dust." Yet in truth, the dream had become a storm. For the curse of betrayal does not stay chained within one heart. It is a serpent that slithers, seeking new soil in which to breed. Days passed. Shahryar, moved by brotherly love, sought to distract Shah Zaman from his melancholy. He gave him charge of the royal hunts, sent him to the gardens, invited him to join the councils of state. But no jest nor melody could heal the wound, until one afternoon, as the two kings prepared for a hunt, Shah Zaman returned early from the stables, and, by cruel trick of fate, found himself hidden behind a marble screen overlooking the royal courtyard. There he saw, and could not look away, as Queen Shahryar, the very jewel of his brother's crown, stepped down from her chamber and met in secret with a slave. Her laughter rippled like poison through the air. Shah Zaman froze. The memory of his own queen's treachery blazed anew in his heart. He turned pale, then red, then white again, and fled. When Shahryar returned, radiant and unsuspecting, his brother's eyes told him what words could not. "Go," whispered Shah Zaman, voice trembling with pity and rage. "See with your own eyes the truth that has destroyed me, and now comes for you." That night, Shahryar crept into the gardens, veiled by shadows. He saw, he heard, and he understood the full cruelty of the world. The next morning, the queen was dead. The slave's body hung from the walls of the palace, but in the king's heart, mercy had perished with them. The twin kingdoms that once bloomed with laughter now stood beneath the shadow of a curse not of magic, but of men. And from that day, the mighty Shahryar began to believe that all women were serpents beneath silk, and that love itself was the most venomous illusion ever born beneath the sun. Chapter 2: The Queen's Betrayal. The sun rose red over the marble domes of Shahryar's palace, as if the heavens themselves had bled for the sorrow of men. Within the gilded halls, where once the air had trembled with music and perfume, now there lingered only silence, the heavy, watchful kind that comes before the breaking of a storm. King Shahryar sat upon his throne of ivory and gold, his crown gleaming like a wound. Before him stood his chief vizier, the aged scholar who had guided his father before him. "My lord," said the vizier softly, "the people await your word. They pray for peace and understanding. The blood of the queen and her servant has washed the marble, but their death has left the kingdom trembling." "Peace." Shahryar's voice was cold as the steel of his sword. "How can there be peace when treachery nests in the heart of my house? She was my moon, my light, and yet she bathed herself in darkness." He rose, his robe sweeping the floor like the wing of a vulture. "All that I believed in, love, loyalty, the truth of a woman's heart, was a mirage. I have seen the face of deceit, and it wears the smile of beauty." The vizier bowed his head, but did not speak, for he had seen that look before, the wild gaze of a man whose soul teetered on the edge of ruin. That night, as the torches burned low and the winds whispered through the palace corridors, Shahryar wandered the gardens alone. The scent of jasmine hung heavy, mocking him with its sweetness. Every flower seemed a reminder of what had died within him. He stopped beside the fountain where his queen once danced beneath the moonlight. There, on nights of joy, she had sung to him in a voice soft as water over stone. Now the same water rippled with his reflection, a face hollowed by pain, eyes rimmed with sleepless fury. And then came the voice of the serpent, that quiet whisper that coils in every broken heart. "They are all the same," it murmured. "All women wear masks. Trust none, for their love is but the web of a spider, spun to ensnare the hearts of fools." The king closed his eyes, but the whisper grew louder. It wound around his thoughts until it became his own. "They are all the same," he echoed. "Every woman carries deceit in her breast." When dawn came, Shahryar summoned his generals and declared a new decree. "From this day forth," he said, "I shall take a bride each night. She shall share my bed and my crown, and when the sun rises, she shall meet the sword. Thus shall I cleanse my soul and the world of their falsehood." Gasps filled the court. The vizier fell to his knees. "My lord, such a command will curse our kingdom. No father will give you his daughter. No mother will sleep in peace." But Shahryar's gaze was distant, fixed upon the horizon where the sun bled into gold. "Let them learn fear," he said. "Let them know the weight of betrayal." And so it began, the reign of the 1,000 brides. Each evening, a new maiden was chosen from among the nobles, the merchants, or even the common folk. Each was robed in silk, crowned with jewels, and brought trembling before the king. Each whispered prayers to the stars as she entered his chamber, and each, when dawn's first light touched the palace walls, was no more. The city that once sang now wept. The markets grew silent. Musicians put away their instruments. Mothers clutched their daughters, and fathers cursed the heavens. Still the king's fury burned like an unending fire. But rage, like the desert wind, does not blow forever in one direction. Beneath the ashes, something darker began to stir, a weariness that no vengeance could satisfy. One night, Shahryar dreamt of his brother Scheherazade. In the dream, they stood together on the edge of the desert, their crowns cast aside, watching a serpent devour its own tail. "Brother," said Shah Zaman, "your vengeance feeds upon itself. Soon nothing will remain, not even you." Shahryar awoke, drenched in sweat, the dream echoing like thunder in his chest. He walked to the balcony, where the city stretched silent below. The moon hung above him, pale and indifferent. "Am I cursed?" he whispered, "or have I cursed myself?" The vizier, hearing his footsteps, approached cautiously. "My king," he said, "your heart is wounded, but wounds cannot heal by cutting deeper. The people suffer, the kingdom weakens. End this." Shahryar turned slowly, his eyes shadowed. "You ask me to forgive what cannot be forgiven." "No, my lord," the vizier said, bowing low. "I ask you to remember that even in ruin there can still be mercy." But mercy was a word the king no longer understood. He turned from the vizier and gazed into the horizon, toward the endless sands, toward the edge of night. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "bring me another bride." And so the wheels of fate turned once more, far beyond the palace walls, in a quiet house lit by the lamp of wisdom. The vizier's own daughters listened as their father returned home with tears in his eyes. The elder, wise beyond her years, rose to meet him. Her name was Scheherazade, and within her heart burned the courage of all the women who had perished before her. But that, as the fates had written, belonged to another chapter. Chapter 3: The Fall of the King's Faith. The days that followed became a blur of blood and silence. Each dawn was the same, a new cry echoing across the marble courtyard, another veil stained red upon the palace floor. The kingdom of Shahryar, once bright as a star in the east, now lay shrouded in fear. The air itself grew heavy with grief. Mothers no longer sang lullabies to their daughters. The streets emptied before sunset, and even the call of the muezzin, once pure and soaring, now trembled with sorrow. But Shahryar's heart had turned to stone. He no longer looked upon the faces of the women brought before him. Their beauty was meaningless, their tears invisible. Each bride was only a ghost in a ritual of vengeance, a sacrifice to a memory that would not die. At night, he would sit alone on his throne, the torchlight flickering across his hardened face. The courtiers dared not speak. The vizier alone remained by his side, aged now by the weight of 1,000 silent protests. "My king," the vizier whispered one evening, "the people suffer. The city starves of joy. You rule a land of widows and graves." Shahryar turned his gaze upon him, eyes like black glass. "Then let the graves be my kingdom," he said. "Let silence be my crown." The vizier bowed deeply, his voice breaking. "You are not the same man who once ruled with mercy. You have slain not only your brides, but the faith of your people." The king rose suddenly, his robes sweeping across the floor like a tide of darkness. "Faith," he thundered. "Faith died the night I looked upon her betrayal. I saw truth with my own eyes. Love is an illusion, a lie spoken by trembling lips. Do you not see, old man? There is no faith left for me to lose." He dismissed the vizier with a wave, and the old man left, his heart heavy with the sorrow of the world. That night, Shahryar could not sleep. The palace walls seemed to whisper around him, the voices of the dead, soft and accusing. He walked through the silent halls, past the empty chambers where laughter had once lived. And in the moonlit courtyard, he saw the reflection of his own face in the fountain's water, pale, gaunt, and hollow-eyed. "Who are you?" he murmured. "A king, or a corpse that still wears a crown?" The wind answered with a sigh that sounded like a woman's voice. He turned sharply, but there was no one there, only the desert beyond the walls, endless and cruel. Then, from the far side of the garden, came the faint sound of music, a soft melody, played on a reed flute. It was sorrowful, ancient, the song of wandering Bedouins who spoke to the stars. Something stirred within Shahryar, something he had buried long ago, a shadow of longing, a ghost of peace. He followed the sound to its source, and found an old gardener sitting beneath a date tree, his eyes closed, his fingers tracing the melody upon his flute. "Old man," said the king, his voice low, "what song is that?" The gardener bowed, startled. "My lord, it is the song of lost faith. We play it for those who have buried their hearts beneath the sand." Shahryar's breath caught. "And what does it say?" The gardener looked up at him, eyes wise with the dust of centuries. "It says that the desert swallows all, love, hate, and sorrow alike. Yet even the desert cannot swallow the dawn forever." The king said nothing. He turned away, but the words followed him like a haunting. That night, sleep finally came, but it brought dreams darker than any waking hour. He dreamt of his queen again, standing upon a sea of shifting sand. She wore no crown, no jewels, only a veil of shadow. "You seek vengeance," she said, her voice echoing like wind through an empty temple. "But what you truly seek is the death of your own pain. And that pain will not die by killing others." He reached for her, but she vanished, and the sands beneath him split, swallowing him whole. Shahryar awoke, screaming. The palace guards rushed to his chamber, but he dismissed them with trembling hands. He sat on the edge of his bed, breathing hard, his heart pounding like a drum of war. "Am I haunted by the dead?" he whispered, "or by my own soul?" For the first time in years, a tear traced his cheek. But pride is a cruel jailer. By dawn, the mask of the king had returned. He rose, bathed, and dressed in his robes of black and gold. When the vizier entered, trembling as always, Shahryar spoke with a voice like ice. "Bring me another bride." The vizier hesitated. "My lord, there are few left who will come willingly." "Then bring her by command," said Shahryar. "And if no father will yield his daughter, then it shall be yours." The vizier froze, the blood drained from his face. "My lord, have mercy. I have 2 daughters, only Dunyazad, gentle as a lamb, and Scheherazade, wise beyond measure." "Do not." "Enough," said the king, rising to his full height. "You have spoken of mercy before. Let it be tested now." The vizier bowed his head, his heart shattering. "As you command, my king." He left the throne room like a man condemned. That night, as the stars burned cold above the desert, he told his daughters what had passed. Dunyazad wept. But Scheherazade, as the moon, laid her hand upon her father's. "Do not weep, father," she said softly, "for perhaps the time of death shall also be the hour of salvation. If the king's heart is lost to darkness, then I shall bring him the light of stories, for no man can kill the dawn forever." Her father trembled. "You cannot. He will destroy you as he has destroyed the others." But Scheherazade only smiled, the kind of smile that hides both courage and sorrow. "Then let my death have meaning. For sometimes, father, the only way to heal a heart is to risk breaking your own." And thus, beneath the endless stars, destiny turned its gaze toward her, the woman whose words would one day outlive kings and time itself. Chapter 4. The Vow of Blood. The dawn rose over the palace like a blade drawn from its sheath, sharp, cold, and merciless. Its light spilled across the white marble courtyards, glinting upon the golden domes, as if to remind the heavens of what had been sworn below. Within the great audience hall, King Shahryar sat upon his throne. The throne itself was a masterpiece, carved from a single block of ivory, inlaid with emeralds and onyx. Yet now it seemed less a seat of majesty and more a monument to despair. Before him stood the court, the viziers, the generals, the priests, and the nobles, all silent, their eyes lowered. None dared speak, for they knew what was to come. King Shahryar rose. His robe was black as night, trimmed with threads of crimson silk. Upon his brow gleamed the royal diadem, and upon his hand was the ring of judgment, the symbol of his power to command life and death. "Hear me," he said, his voice echoing through the vaulted chamber. "I, Shahryar, King of Kings, Lord of the East, and Keeper of the Flame of Justice, make this vow before heaven and earth." He lifted his sword, a curved scimitar of Damascus steel, its edge gleaming like lightning. "Let it be known that I have seen the deceit of women. I have felt the venom of their treachery and the ruin of their love. Therefore, I swear, every night I shall take a wife, and with the coming of dawn she shall die. Thus shall I cleanse my soul, and thus shall I guard my heart from lies." A murmur rippled through the court, a wave of dread. The vizier trembled, his aged hands clasped before him. "My lord," he dared to speak, "this vow will drown the kingdom in tears. Mercy is the jewel of kings. Do not cast it into the dust." Shahryar turned his gaze upon him, and though his eyes were calm, there was something in them that chilled the blood. "Mercy," he said softly. "Mercy was slain with the queen. Let her lie buried with the rest of the dead." Then, before all his court, he drew the sword across his palm, letting his blood fall upon the marble floor. "By my blood and by the eternal stars," he declared, "this vow shall bind me until my soul finds peace or perishes." The priests bowed their heads, reciting verses beneath their breath, but none dared speak against him again. From that day, the vow became law. The city that had once thrived with laughter became a tomb of silence. The call of the muezzin echoed across empty streets. Brides were chosen by fear, not love. The scent of incense could no longer hide the stench of grief. And every morning, when the sun rose above the crimson horizon, another veil hung from the palace gates, a sign that the king's vow had claimed its due. Yet far from the throne room, within a chamber lined with scrolls and candles, Scheherazade, the vizier's eldest daughter, sat reading by lamplight. Her eyes traced the words of ancient tales, the adventures of forgotten kings, the wisdom of travelers, and the parables of the prophets. Her sister Dunyazad entered quietly, her face pale. "Sister," she whispered, "have you heard? The king has made his vow. He has sworn to take a new bride each night until death ends his madness." Scheherazade closed the book, her fingers resting upon its worn cover. "Yes," she said softly, "I have heard." "Then you know what he has commanded father to do. He will be forced to offer one of us." For a moment, neither spoke. The candlelight flickered, casting shadows upon the walls, shadows that seemed to breathe and move with the silence. Finally, Scheherazade rose. "Then it shall be me," Dunyazad gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "No, you cannot. He will kill you as he has killed them all." But Scheherazade's eyes were calm, her voice steady. "If I die, then let it be for something greater than fear. I will not watch our people perish while I hide behind walls. If no one can change the king's heart with arms or counsel, then perhaps a story may yet reach where swords cannot." Her sister's eyes filled with tears. "Stories? Do you truly believe words can save you?" Scheherazade smiled faintly. "Words are seeds, little sister. Even in the desert, some seeds take root." That night, she went to her father. The vizier sat at his desk, his head bowed, his heart torn between duty and love. "Father," she said gently, "I have come to ask you to take me to the king." The old man's eyes widened in horror. "No, do not speak such madness. You are my heart, my light. I will not deliver you to death." But Scheherazade knelt before him. "Father, listen. Perhaps fate has chosen me for this. If I can reach his heart, even for a moment, perhaps he will remember the man he once was. And if I fail, then my death will not be in vain." The vizier shook his head, tears glistening in his beard. "You do not understand. His eyes see only ghosts. His heart is a tomb." "Then let me be the voice that echoes within it," said Scheherazade. Her father turned away, broken. He remembered her as a child, chasing butterflies in the royal gardens, her laughter bright as silver bells. Now she stood before him as a woman, and something greater than a woman. At last, he spoke. "If you go to him, he will not spare you." Scheherazade took his trembling hands in hers. "Then let me not be spared, but let me try." The vizier wept, his tears falling upon her hands. "Then may Allah guide you, my daughter. And if you must die, may your words become immortal." She kissed his forehead and rose. The next morning, as the first light touched the palace walls, she clothed herself in white silk embroidered with gold. Her hair was braided with pearls, her eyes lined with kohl, not as a bride of flesh, but as a messenger of fate. When she entered the throne room, all fell silent. The king looked upon her, tall, serene, and unafraid. "Who are you?" he asked. She bowed deeply. "I am Scheherazade, daughter of your vizier. I have come to be your bride." A shadow crossed the king's face. "You know the price of that vow." "Yes," she said, her voice steady, "and I accept it." He studied her for a long moment, her calm, her poise, her eyes that held not fear, but understanding. "Very well," he said at last. "Tonight you shall be my queen, and at dawn my vow will be kept." Scheherazade bowed once more, but as she rose, her gaze lingered upon him, and in her eyes flickered a light the king could not name, something between pity and destiny. And thus the wheels of fate began to turn again, toward a night that would change the course of 1001 more. Chapter 5: The Land of Silence. There was a time when the city of Shahryar's kingdom was a place of music and fragrance, where merchants sang to the rhythm of the desert wind, and children's laughter echoed through the courtyards. But now all that remained was silence. The fountains no longer sang. The markets stood empty. The once bright banners that fluttered above the gates now hung like shrouds, heavy with dust. And each morning, as the sun rose crimson over the dunes, the people whispered one name in terror, the king. In every home, mothers clutched their daughters, praying that the soldiers would not come knocking at their doors. Fathers dared not meet the gaze of the royal guards who moved through the streets like shadows. Even the wind, once warm and playful, carried a chill as it passed through the palace towers. The king's vow had become a curse upon the land. Each dawn brought mourning, and each dusk brought dread. The rhythm of life itself had been replaced by the ticking of death. No music, no laughter, no song dared to rise above the stillness. It was as if the kingdom had forgotten what joy felt like. And yet, amid that silence, there were whispers of defiance. Hidden behind closed doors, the people spoke of a girl brave and wise, the vizier's eldest daughter, who had vowed to face the king. Some called her mad, others called her a savior, but no one dared to say her name aloud, for fear that the wind might carry it to the palace. Inside the grand halls of the vizier's house, Scheherazade stood by the window, gazing upon the dead city. The moon was a pale crescent, like a blade ready to strike. Her sister Dunyazad sat beside her, clutching a book of old tales, her eyes red from weeping. "Do you not fear death?" she whispered. "Do you not hear the silence? Even the gods have turned away." Scheherazade turned, her voice calm but burning with purpose. "The gods have not turned away, little one. They are listening. They are waiting for someone to speak." Dunyazad shook her head. "But he kills them all, every dawn. What makes you believe he will spare you?" Scheherazade smiled faintly. "Because I will not plead for my life. I will give him something he has long forgotten." What could that be? Wonder. The word hung in the air like incense. Scheherazade closed the book her sister held, tracing the golden letters on its cover. "Stories are not mere words, Dunyazad. They are bridges between hearts. Even a king who has lost his soul cannot resist the call of a tale untold." Her sister began to weep again. "But if you fail, then I shall die," Scheherazade said softly. "But if I do nothing, the kingdom will die with me." That night, she went to her father. The vizier was an old man now, his face lined by grief, his heart shattered by guilt. When she knelt before him, he turned away. "Do not ask it of me," he said hoarsely. "I have delivered too many daughters to their graves. I cannot deliver my own." Scheherazade took his trembling hands. "Father, you have served the king with obedience. Now serve your people with courage. Let me be the last sacrifice." The vizier's tears fell freely. "He will kill you, perhaps," she said. "But before he does, he will listen, and perhaps he will remember." The vizier tried to speak, but no words came. The silence that filled the room was heavy like the silence of the city itself, vast and suffocating. He knew then that she would not be swayed, and so, with a broken heart, he bowed his head and said the words that would seal her fate. "May the gods guard your tongue, my daughter. May they turn your words into wings." The next day, the king ordered another bride to be brought before him. But when he saw Scheherazade standing in the golden hall, veiled yet unafraid, even Shahryar's cold heart stirred. Her eyes met his clear, unwavering, deep as the desert night. "You?" he asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. "The daughter of my vizier dares to stand before me." "I do not dare, my king," she said softly. "I obey." He studied her for a long moment. There was something different in her gaze, something the others had not possessed. Not fear, not even defiance. Something else, curiosity. That night, the kingdom held its breath. From the slums to the palaces, from the dunes to the harbor, no one slept. All waited to hear if the curse would claim another soul by dawn. But inside the royal chamber, beneath the canopy of stars and golden lamps, Scheherazade knelt before the king. "My lord," she said, "before I die, grant me one last request." Shahrazad's brow furrowed. "You dare to ask favors?" She smiled faintly. "Only this, that my sister Dunyazad may be allowed to spend the night with us, for she cannot sleep without hearing a story." "A story? Yes, my king. One last tale to comfort her heart and perhaps your own." Shahryar leaned back upon his silken throne, his eyes dark and unreadable. Then, after a long silence, he said, "Tell your story. When dawn comes, your voice will die with the sun." Scheherazade bowed her head. "Then I must make the night last forever." Outside, the city remained silent. But within the palace walls, a single voice rose like music for the first time in years. And as her words began to weave through the night, even the stars seemed to lean closer to listen. Chapter 6. The Vizier's Daughters. The moon rose high above the silent city, casting a pale glow upon the marble domes of the vizier's estate. Inside, two sisters sat by a flickering oil lamp, the last flame that dared to burn in a kingdom drowned in fear. Scheherazade was calm. The faint scent of myrrh hung around her like a prophecy. Her sister, Dunyazad, trembled beside her, clutching the hem of Scheherazade's robe. "Do not go," Dunyazad whispered. "Please, sister. The king is not a man anymore. He is a storm that devours all who stand before him." Scheherazade smiled, though sorrow shadowed her eyes. "A storm, yes, but even a storm must listen to the wind that guides it. If I can reach his heart before dawn, perhaps the storm will rest." "You speak as though words can heal madness. Words have shaped empires, Dunyazad. They have slain dragons, moved mountains, and made gods weep. Why should they not heal a man?" Her sister looked away, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You are the only light left in this cursed land. If you die, all hope dies with you." Scheherazade placed her hand on Dunyazad's cheek, her touch soft yet resolute. "Then I will not die. I will keep speaking until hope lives again." Their father entered then, the Grand Vizier, his robe heavy with sorrow. His steps faltered as he looked upon his daughters. Once his house had been filled with laughter, the laughter of youth and joy. Now it was filled with silence and dread. "It is time," he said quietly. "The king awaits." Scheherazade rose. Her veil shimmered like starlight, her posture regal though her fate was sealed. She kissed her sister's forehead and whispered, "Be brave for me." But Dunyazad seized her hand. "Then let me come with you. If I must lose you, I will lose you beneath the same sky." The vizier's eyes widened. "No, child." Scheherazade turned to him with quiet resolve. "Father, grant her this. She will not defy the king. She will only listen and bear witness." The vizier hesitated, his heart torn in two. Then he nodded slowly, unable to speak. And so the two sisters walked through the night, guided by torchlight and guarded by soldiers who kept their eyes fixed upon the ground. The city seemed to hold its breath as they passed. Mothers peered from behind shutters. Fathers bowed their heads in prayer. At the palace gates, the vizier's trembling voice announced them. "My lord, I bring you your bride, my daughter, Scheherazade." King Shahryar stood upon the dais, tall and unmoving, his shadow stretching across the marble like a scar. His eyes, once the color of warm honey, now burned cold and dark. He studied her. "So this is how far despair has driven you, vizier, to offer your own flesh and blood." Scheherazade bowed deeply. "My father obeys his king, as do I." A flicker of surprise touched the king's expression. "You do not tremble." "I do," she said softly. "But not for my life." "For what, then?" "For your soul, my king." A silence fell so deep that even the torches seemed to hold their flame. Then the king turned away. "You may bring your sister, but when dawn comes, both of your voices will end." Scheherazade bowed again. "Then I must make the night endless." The king frowned, but something, curiosity, perhaps, or fate, kept him from dismissing her. He gestured to the guards to leave. When the great doors closed, the world outside vanished. The sisters stood within the golden chamber of death. The air was thick with incense and sorrow. Scheherazade turned to Dunyazad and said softly, "Dearest, will you not ask me for a story, as you always do?" Dunyazad hesitated, tears trembling in her lashes. "Yes, sister, please, tell me one last tale before the dawn." The king's gaze sharpened. "A tale?" Scheherazade smiled faintly. "It eases her fear." "If it displeases you, my lord, I shall stop." He waved his hand impatiently. "Speak, it matters not. Soon the sun will rise." Scheherazade drew a breath. Her voice flowed like the first note of a forgotten song, soft, melodic, ancient. "There was once a merchant," she began, "who journeyed through the deserts of Hind in search of fortune. But fortune, as all men know, is a fickle creature." As her words filled the air, something miraculous happened. The stillness of the chamber seemed to lift. The king, against his will, found himself listening. Her story painted the world anew of distant lands, of spirits and kings, of choices and consequences. Her tone wove around his anger like silk around a blade. The night deepened. Time began to lose meaning. When the first hint of dawn touched the windows, she stopped suddenly. The king leaned forward. What then? What became of the merchant? Scheherazade bowed her head. "The sun is rising, my lord. If you permit, I will finish tomorrow night." Shahryar hesitated. It was the first time in years that he had wanted anything other than death. "Tomorrow," he said slowly, "you will finish the tale." And for the first time since the curse began, a woman left his chamber alive. Outside, the city woke to whispers. Word spread through the markets and alleyways. "The new bride lives." The king listened. The silence of the kingdom trembled, not with fear this time, but with the faintest echo of hope. Chapter 7. The night of the first story. The night spread its dark veil across the kingdom once more. Yet this night was different. The city did not sleep in mourning. It waited, silent and breathless, for the sound of one voice, the voice that had made even the king forget the rising sun. Inside the royal chamber, golden lamps flickered against silk curtains, their light trembling like captive stars. Scheherazade sat before King Shahryar, calm as the moon reflected in still water. Her sister, Dunyazad, sat quietly nearby, pretending to tremble, but secretly watching her sister's every word, every breath. The king reclined on his throne of ivory and gold. His face was unreadable, carved from the same stone as his fury. But behind his cold eyes, curiosity stirred a hunger he had not felt in years. Scheherazade bowed her head gracefully. "If it pleases my lord," she said softly, "I will continue the tale of the merchant whose fate hung between life and death." Shahryar's voice rumbled low. "Continue." "I would hear how a mere merchant could defy fate itself." Scheherazade smiled faintly. "As my king commands." And so, she began. "There was once a merchant," she said, "a man of great fortune and greater pride. His caravans crossed the sands like rivers of gold, and his name was whispered in every city between Persia and Hind. One day, weary from travel, he sat beneath a great date tree to rest. He took bread and dates from his satchel and began to eat. But as he cast away the stones of the dates, one struck the invisible chest of a sleeping jinn. The king's eyes narrowed, his fingers tightening on the armrest of his throne." Scheherazade continued, her voice weaving through the air like the perfume of frankincense. "The earth trembled. Smoke rose from the ground, and from the cloud of sand and fire, the jinn appeared, vast as the horizon, his eyes burning like molten rubies. She lifted her gaze, and for a moment her eyes reflected the very fire she described. 'Who dares strike me?' thundered the jinn. 'By Allah, I will have thy blood for this insult.' The merchant, trembling, fell to his knees. 'O mighty spirit, forgive me. I did not know you slept beneath this tree.' But the jinn's laughter split the sky. 'Ignorance does not spare you from death. I shall take your life, for I was slain by a man such as you.' The king leaned forward slightly, his gaze fixed on her. Scheherazade's words flowed like a river, slow, deep, mesmerizing. The merchant wept. 'O great jinn,' he said, 'grant me a year's grace that I may return home. Give my wealth to my family and bid them farewell. I will come back to this very place and surrender my life to you.' The jinn considered this and said, 'If thou dost not return, I shall find thee and tear thee limb from limb.' The merchant swore upon his soul and departed. A year passed. He returned to his city, divided his fortune, and told his family the truth. They wept and begged him not to go, but he kept his word, and on the appointed day he journeyed back to the date tree. Scheherazade paused, her voice growing soft like a thread of wind. When he arrived, the jinn appeared once more, his shadow stretching across the dunes. 'Have you come to die, mortal?' he thundered. The merchant bowed his head. 'Yes, for I gave my word.' Just then, a white-haired old man appeared, leading a gazelle on a leash. Seeing the scene, the old man cried, 'Stop, mighty jinn, spare this man, and I shall tell you a story stranger than his crime.' The king's brow furrowed. A story within a story. Shahryar's lips curved slightly. 'Yes, my lord, for every tale is but a doorway to another.' Shahryar nodded slowly. 'Then speak on,' the jinn agreed. 'If thy tale amazes me,' he said, 'I shall forgive a third of the merchant's life.' And so the old man began to speak, a tale of love, of transformation, and of fate. But before he could finish, the dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sands with light. Scheherazade fell silent. The first rays of morning crept through the windows, bathing her in gold. The king blinked, startled. 'Why do you stop?' 'The sun has risen, my king,' she said gently. 'And you swore I might finish the tale when night falls again.' The king's jaw tightened, yet a strange warmth flickered behind his eyes. 'You have bound me with your words, woman. Very well. When the moon returns, so shall your voice.' Scheherazade bowed her head. 'Then I will pray the night comes swiftly.' For a long moment, The king stared at her, not as a conqueror studying his prey, but as a man trying to remember what wonder felt like. Then he rose and left the chamber without a word. Outside, the city awoke to astonishment. For the second morning in a row, the king's bride still lived. Rumors spread like wildfire. The people whispered that the vizier's daughter had bewitched the king with tales older than time itself. In the marketplace, old storytellers began to gather again, daring to sing beneath the desert sky. Children laughed. Women stepped out of their houses, and in the hearts of men, something long forgotten began to stir: hope. In her chamber, Scheherazade knelt beside her sister, exhausted yet radiant. Dunyazad whispered, "He listens to you, sister. He truly listens." "Yes," she said, "but to heal a heart so wounded, I must make him see himself in every tale. Only then will the curse begin to break." She looked toward the west, where the sun vanished behind the dunes. "Tomorrow I will tell the story of the first old man and the enchanted gazelle. It will be the tale that teaches him mercy and beyond the palace walls." As night prepared to fall again, the stars themselves seemed to whisper, "The Queen of Stories has begun her 1001 nights." Chapter the 8th. The Awakening of the King. Dawn crept slowly over the domes and minarets of Shahryar city, turning the marble into rose and gold. The world stirred again to life. Merchants opened their shops, call to prayer rose from distant towers, and for the second time in many moons, the royal palace did not echo with mourning. Yet inside the palace, King Shahryar did not rest. He sat upon the balcony overlooking his vast, silent kingdom. His eyes traced the horizon where the desert met the sky, endless, merciless, and beautiful. The words of Scheherazade haunted him still, like verses of an unfinished prophecy. Every tale, she had said, is but a doorway to another. He could not escape them. The voice of the jinn, the trembling merchant, the promise kept against all fear. It all echoed in the empty halls of his mind. Why had her words stirred him so? Why had he, the conqueror of men and destroyer of vows, allowed her to live another dawn? He pressed a hand to his brow. The memory of his lost queen rose unbidden, her laughter, her betrayal, the taste of blood and tears that had followed. "Women are treachery," he whispered to the wind. Yet she speaks with such light in her voice. Behind him, the royal advisor, his loyal vizier, and Scheherazade's own father, approached with measured steps. "My king," said the vizier cautiously, "the council awaits your judgment upon the northern rebels." But Shahryar's gaze did not move from the sands. "Let them wait. Tell me, vizier, do you believe stories hold truth?" The vizier blinked, taken aback. "Truth, my lord? They are but illusions, crafted to entertain." Shahryar turned to him sharply. "And yet your daughter's illusions have stayed my hand from death 2 nights in a row." The vizier lowered his eyes. "She speaks to you, not with deception, Majesty, but with hope." "Hope," the king muttered, tasting the word as if it were poison. "A fragile thing, it cannot resurrect the dead." He dismissed the vizier with a wave of his hand, yet the thought lingered. When night came again, he felt something he had long forgotten: anticipation. The moon rose high over the desert that night, casting silver over the palace domes. Within the royal chamber, the air shimmered with the scent of sandalwood and myrrh. Scheherazade waited, her eyes calm, her heart steady as the rhythm of fate. Dunyazad, ever her quiet shadow, whispered, "He looks changed tonight, sister. His eyes, They no longer burn as before. Scheherazade smiled faintly. Then the story has begun to work. When the king entered, his steps were slower, less driven by wrath and more by curiosity. He seated himself upon the throne beside her couch and spoke, his voice low. You left your tale unfinished. The merchant yet lives, but the old man had only begun his story. Speak, and let me hear how one man's mercy might weigh against his sin. Scheherazade bowed her head, as my king commands, and she began once more. The first old man, she said, was a man of wisdom and sorrow. Once he had loved a woman with eyes like the desert dawn, yet she was not as she seemed, for she was a sorceress, one who could shape the hearts of men as easily as clay. The king's brow furrowed. Scheherazade's voice flowed like a river at dusk, slow, deep, irresistible. When she grew weary of him, she transformed his son into a bull and his beloved concubine into a cow. And when the time of sacrifice came, she bade him kill them both. But by the mercy of Allah, he saw through her deceit. He spared their lives, and by doing so, broke her curse. The sorceress fled, and his son and concubine were restored to human form. The king's eyes flickered. He spared them, though they had been beasts. Yes, said Scheherazade softly, for the heart that forgives can see what lies beyond the veil of illusion. Shahryar said nothing. His fingers tapped the throne's armrest. He was thinking, though, of what she could not tell. When the jinn heard this tale, she continued, he was moved and spared 1/3 of the merchant's life. Then a second old man approached, leading to hounds by golden chains, and offered to tell another story more wondrous still. And as Scheherazade spoke, her words wound deeper into the king's mind, each phrase a mirror, each image a spark of forgotten feeling. He began to see, not the merchant or the jinn, but himself, a man consumed by fury, turning love into ashes, unable to forgive. Her voice softened like a desert wind before dawn. The merchant waited. His heart was steady. He feared death no longer. For when one has kept his word and faced his fate, the chains of fear fall away. A silence fell. The lamps flickered. The king looked at her, truly looked. Her eyes were not pleading. They were infinite, like the sky after storm. You speak of mercy as though it is a weapon, he said quietly. Scheherazade met his gaze. It can be, my king. Against hatred, it cuts deeper than any sword. He turned away, his jaw tight, yet his voice, when he spoke, had lost its edge. Go on. Tell me of the second old man. She began to speak again of betrayal, of transformation, of redemption. But before the tale could end, the eastern horizon grew pale. Scheherazade lowered her voice, and so the jinn awaited the next story. But the dawn, my king, forbids me to speak further. Shahryar's hand lifted in protest. No, finish it, she smiled gently. I swore never to lie, but if fate wills it, I shall finish when night returns. He exhaled slowly, torn between anger and reluctant admiration. You test me, woman. I awaken you, she replied. Their eyes met, his filled with confusion, hers with quiet purpose. For the first time in countless years, something human stirred in the heart of the king. That morning, Shahryar did not summon the executioner. Instead, he summoned silence. He dismissed his guards, ignored his ministers, and walked alone through the palace gardens where his first queen once wandered. He stopped before a fountain, its waters sparkling in the early light. The reflection that met his gaze was not that of a monster, but of a man haunted by his own curse. He whispered to himself, If even jinn can be moved by mercy, what remains for me? A man who has forgotten how to forgive. And the wind carried his words away into the desert, toward a destiny not yet written. Chapter 9. The second tale of the jinn. The moon had scarcely risen when the palace fell silent once more. It was the third night that the king had spared his bride, and already the servants whispered of miracles. Some said the vizier's daughter had bewitched the ruler with spells of moonlight. Others swore she had stolen the heart he had long buried. But in the king's chamber there was no sorcery, only a story waiting to be told. King Shahryar sat in the dim glow of golden lamps, his gaze steady but softer than before. Scheherazade, cloaked in silk the color of twilight, waited beside him, her hands folded upon her lap. The king spoke first, his tone low, uncertain. "You left me at the moment the second old man approached the jinn. I have thought upon that tale all day, of mercy, of vows kept. You have unsettled my sleep, woman." Scheherazade bowed her head slightly. "Then, perhaps, my lord, the night shall grant you rest again through understanding." He leaned back upon his throne. "Then, speak. I would hear the second tale." As the merchant trembled before the jinn, began Scheherazade, her voice soft as wind through palm leaves. "There came a second old man, leading to black hounds by golden chains. His eyes were deep and weary, as though they had seen too much of the world. 'O mighty jinn,' the old man cried, 'spare this merchant, and I shall tell you a tale so wondrous you will marvel till the sun itself forgets to rise.' The jinn crossed his arms, his voice like thunder across the dunes. 'If thy story amazes me, I shall forgive another third of the merchant's life. But if it fails to please me, thou shalt join him in death.' And so the second old man began. He told of two brothers, merchants of great renown, who ruled over twin kingdoms separated by the sea. The elder was wise, the younger ambitious. Yet envy, that serpent of the heart, crept between them. Each man sought to prove his greatness, Scheherazade said, until the younger, consumed by pride, turned to sorcery. He summoned spirits to multiply his riches, to twist the fates in his favor. But when he looked again upon his reflection, he saw not a man, but a beast. The king's eyes darkened. He said nothing, but his hand stilled mid-motion. The elder brother, seeing what his kin had become, wept. For blood cannot be unbound by magic, nor love by betrayal. In his grief, he cursed his brother, not with death, but with remembrance. The younger was transformed into a black hound, doomed to follow his brother for all eternity as a living shadow of his guilt. The words struck like a blade in the king's chest. Scheherazade saw the flicker of pain cross his face, the first crack in the wall of stone that was his heart. "And the elder?" he asked quietly. Scheherazade's gaze met his. He bound the hound with golden chains, not to imprison him, but to remind himself that mercy is the only chain strong enough to bind evil. Shahryar turned away, his throat tightening, for in her story he saw his own brother, Shah Zaman, whose sorrow had first brought the shadow of doubt into his heart, whose tale of betrayal had ignited the madness that consumed them both. He spoke bitterly, half to himself. "Brothers, always. It begins with brothers." Scheherazade did not interrupt. The silence that followed was sacred, the silence of a man standing before his own reflection. The jinn, she continued softly, was moved by the tale. "I forgive a second third of the merchant's life," he declared. "For though I am a creature of wrath, I too have known the pain of losing what I loved to envy. The king's gaze lifted. Even Jinn, no sorrow, Scheherazade nodded. Even fire-born hearts have felt the chill of loss. Her words hung in the air like incense, curling between them. That night, the king did not rage or question. He merely listened. He watched the way Scheherazade's eyes glimmered with compassion, not for herself, not even for the heroes she described, but for him. He asked at last, "Why do you tell me these tales of mercy and forgiveness? Do you seek to tame me?" Scheherazade smiled faintly, though her heart trembled. "I seek not to tame my king, but to remind, for even the storm must one day remember the peace that birthed it." The king fell silent again. He turned his gaze toward the open balcony where the stars shimmered above the endless desert. "If mercy can redeem beasts," he murmured, "then what of men who have forgotten it?" Scheherazade whispered, "Then stories must remind them." For a moment, the two were silent, two souls divided by fate, yet bound by the invisible thread of words. The night deepened. Outside, the wind rose, whispering across the dunes like 1,000 ghosts. In that sound, Shahryar thought he heard his wife's laughter, the laughter that had once betrayed him, the laughter that had shattered his world. But now, for the first time, it did not fill him with rage. It filled him with sorrow. He pressed his hand against his chest and felt the faintest ache, an old wound reopening not with pain, but with memory. "She has made me feel again," he thought bitterly. And feeling is a kind of torment. As if hearing his unspoken thought, Scheherazade spoke gently. "Pain, my lord, is not always punishment. Sometimes it is the path toward understanding." He looked at her sharply. "And what do you understand of pain?" She met his gaze without fear. Enough to know that even the mightiest king cannot rule his heart forever. The words lingered between them, alive and dangerous. Then, slowly, Shahryar rose from his throne. "You speak boldly for a woman whose life depends upon my will." Scheherazade bowed her head, though her eyes did not waver. "Perhaps that is why I must speak truly." The king turned away, but this time, not in anger. Something within him, long dormant, stirred like the first breeze before a dawn. The first light of morning began to color the sky. Scheherazade lowered her voice, as though speaking to the fading stars. "And so," she whispered, "the merchant awaited the third old man, who would tell the final tale that might redeem his life." The king exhaled slowly. "Then there is still more." "Yes, my king," she said. "For every soul must hear 3 truths before it is free." He hesitated, then nodded. "Then let the sun rise. Tonight you will tell me the third." "As you will, my lord." As the dawn swept through the palace, the king felt the world shift. For the first time in many years, he did not dread the coming night. He longed for it. Chapter X. The third old man's tale. The moon was a silver scimitar, cutting through the velvet sky. A stillness held the palace, not of fear, but of anticipation. The servants had learned to walk softly now, for the king listened each night, not to wrath or counsel, but to the whisper of a woman's story. On this, the 4th night, King Shahryar entered his chamber alone. The air was thick with sandalwood and rose. Scheherazade stood waiting, her hair falling like a river of ink down her shoulders, her eyes bright as stars over the desert. When he looked upon her, he no longer saw the doomed bride he had once condemned. He saw something else, a light that unsettled his heart. "You left me with 2 tales," he said slowly. "Each man spared the merchant's life with a story of mercy. Tell me now of the third old man, and what truth lies in his words." Scheherazade bowed her head slightly. As my lord commands, I shall tell of the third old man, whose story holds the secret that binds all others. When the second old man's tale was finished, she began, her voice soft yet unyielding. The Jinn turned his fiery gaze upon the third. "And you, gray wanderer," said the spirit, "what tale do you carry that might redeem this merchant's final breath?" The third old man stepped forward, his robes tattered by time. In his hands he held a harp carved from cedar, its strings glinting like threads of dawn. Upon his shoulder perched a dove as white as moonlight. "O mighty Jinn," said the old man, "I bring a tale not of wrath nor magic, but of love, the one force even your fire cannot consume." The Jinn laughed, a sound that made the desert quake. "Love," he thundered, "a weakness of mortals." But the old man's gaze did not waver. "Then listen and judge for yourself. Long ago, there was a poet who loved a woman born of the sea. She was neither human nor jinn, but something between her eyes shimmered like waves beneath sunlight, and her laughter carried the scent of salt and wind. The poet sang to her beneath the moon, and she came to him from the foam. For 100 nights they met upon the shore. He spoke of stars, and she of the deep. Yet one night she wept, for she knew her nature forbade her from remaining on land. "If I stay," she said, "the sea will wither, and I will die. If I go, your songs will fade." The poet took her hands and whispered, "Then I will cast my songs into the sea, and you shall carry them in your waves." And so she departed, leaving him her tears, which turned to pearls when they touched the sand. The poet aged. His voice grew frail, but each night he sat by the shore and sang to the waves, and the waves answered. "When he died," said the old man, "the sea rose in mourning. Its foam washed over his grave, and from it sprang a tree, its fruit round as pearls, its leaves whispering his verses in the wind. And those who eat of its fruit taste, for a moment, the sweetness of love beyond death." Scheherazade's voice trembled like the strings of a lute. The Jinn, upon hearing this tale, was silent, for even he, made of fire and vengeance, could not scorn a love that defied time itself. The king's eyes glimmered faintly. And what did the Jinn do then? He wept. Scheherazade said simply, a single tear that fell upon the sand, turning into a crystal of light. He turned to the merchant and said, "Because you have brought before me 3 men whose hearts remember love, I forgive you entirely. Go and live with gratitude, for you have reminded even a creature of wrath of the beauty of mercy." Silence filled the room like incense. The words hung suspended between them. King Shahryar exhaled slowly. "Love, mercy, gratitude, all things I once scorned." Scheherazade met his gaze. "Then perhaps, my king, this story was not meant for the merchant, but for you." He looked at her sharply. "Do you dare to compare me to that Jinn?" Her voice was steady. Both lost their faith in the goodness of hearts. Both believed vengeance was the only truth, and both, when reminded of compassion, wept. He turned away, but not before she saw the flicker in his eyes, the same flicker she had seen when he first began to remember what sorrow felt like. That night, after Scheherazade's tale ended, Shahryar walked alone through the palace corridors until he reached the royal gardens. The moonlight danced upon the fountains, and the scent of jasmine filled the air. He approached the reflecting pool, gazing into its surface, but the reflection that met him was no longer the same, no longer the cold tyrant who had executed his brides, but a man haunted by ghosts of his own making. "Why does she do this?" he whispered. Why does she speak to me of forgiveness? She should curse me, yet she brings me peace." He knelt beside the water, his face pale in the moonlight. And for the first time since the day his heart had shattered, the king wept. His tears rippled across the pool, scattering the stars reflected within. In the shadows beyond, Scheherazade watched from afar, unseen. Her heart ached for him, not as for a tyrant, but as for a man lost to pain. "Yes," she whispered, "weep, my king, for tears are the first prayers of the soul." When dawn broke, Shahryar returned to his throne. His counselors found him silent, his expression unreadable. But those who looked closely saw that his eyes were different, as though he had seen something far beyond the veil of kingship. He gave no order of execution that morning. Instead, he said only, "Let the people rejoice. No blood shall be spilled in this palace today." The vizier bowed low, astonished. "By your will, my king." And far below, in the streets of the city, joy erupted like spring rain after drought. That night, as the stars climbed the heavens again, Scheherazade prepared herself once more. She had crossed the threshold of his heart, but her task was not yet done. For to truly heal the king, she would have to lead him beyond mercy to hope. She sat by the window, watching the desert shimmer beneath the moonlight. "3 tales have softened his wrath," she murmured, "but 1,000 more await. The night has only begun." And in the distance, the wind whispered like an ancient song, carrying her words across the sands. Stories are not meant to end, they are meant to awaken. Chapter 11. The king who dreamed of the sea that night. Sleep came to Shahryar, not as mercy, but as a tempest. The desert wind moaned through the lattice of his chamber, and the moonlight fell upon his restless form like broken silver. Though he lay upon sheets of silk, his heart tossed in a storm of shadows. He dreamed, but it was no ordinary dream. He found himself standing upon the shore of a vast and endless sea. The sky was neither night nor day, but an eternal twilight of burning gold and deep indigo. The water shimmered with light that seemed alive, whispering in tongues older than time. At first, he thought it was silence that surrounded him. Then he heard it, the low hum of sorrow. The waves rose and fell like the breathing of a sleeping giant. From far across the horizon came a voice, "Shahryar, king of dust, do you remember what the sea once was?" He turned, but no one stood there, only the wind and the glimmering water. "Who speaks?" he demanded. The sea responded with a great sigh. Its foam curled at his feet, and within it he saw reflections, not of the moon, but of faces, women's faces, hundreds of them. Their eyes stared back at him, calm yet mournful. The king staggered backward. "No, it cannot be. Do you remember their names, O king?" He clutched his head. The faces multiplied, rising with each wave. Brides he had condemned, voices he had silenced. They did not accuse, they simply watched him. "Why do you haunt me?" he cried. "Because you have forgotten that you were once human." The water rippled, and from its depths rose a single figure, a woman cloaked in silver mist. Her eyes burned with the color of dawn. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I am the sea," she said. "The same sea that once heard the poet's song, the same that carried Scheherazade's stories across the ages. I am memory and mercy." Shahryar fell to his knees, trembling. "Then tell me, O sea, why must I suffer these visions?" "Because only those who weep can learn to see," she replied. "And you, king of dust, have buried your tears beneath stone." She extended her hand. The surface of the water shimmered, and he saw himself, not as he was, but as he had been. a young man, laughing beside his brother, his heart full of faith. Then came the woman he had once loved, the one whose betrayal had shattered him. He reached for her image, but it dissolved like mist. She broke her vows, he said bitterly. She stained the purity of my trust. The sea's voice deepened. And for one sin, you condemned the innocent. You turned pain into law and called it justice. The king lowered his head. What else was I to do? The wound was too deep, so you made the world bleed with you. A silence followed, the kind that fills the heart before it breaks. The waves began to glow brighter, and suddenly the sky cracked open. 1,000 stars fell into the sea, turning it into a mirror of fire. From its depths emerged a golden bird, the Simurgh, wings vast as mountains, feathers gleaming with the light of eternity. It circled above him, crying in a voice that was both music and thunder. Shahryar, the Simurgh, called. The curse upon your heart is not of others' making, it is your own shadow that binds you. The king raised his eyes, tears mingling with salt wind. Tell me, great bird, how may I break it? The Simurgh descended, and with each beat of its wings, the sea surged higher, encircling him. You cannot undo death, said the bird, but you may honor it. The souls of those you wronged do not seek your destruction, they seek remembrance. The king bowed his head, and Scheherazade, he asked softly, what does she seek? She seeks to awaken what remains of your soul, the bird replied. Every story she weaves is a thread, binding you not to vengeance, but to life. As the Simurgh rose into the heavens, its feathers turned into stars, and its voice echoed through the endless twilight. When the sea within you is calm, O king, the dawn shall return. He awoke with a gasp. The first rays of dawn were spilling through the curtains, casting gold upon the marble floor. His heart beat wildly, as though the sea itself still surged within his chest. He rose and went to the window. The city below shimmered with morning light, the same city he had once ruled with an iron fist. For the first time, he saw it not as his domain, but as a living thing, fragile, breathing, beautiful. And upon the horizon, faint but clear, he could hear it, the murmur of the distant sea. He whispered to himself, mercy, remembrance, love. Each word tasted strange upon his tongue, yet it felt as though his soul had been thirsting for them forever. That night, when Scheherazade entered his chamber, she found him standing by the window, silent. The moonlight bathed him in silver, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw the shadow of sorrow lifted from his face. My king, she said gently, shall I tell another story? He turned to her, and his eyes were softer than she had ever seen. Yes, he said, but tonight, tell me one not of judgment, nor of vengeance. Tell me of hope. A faint smile curved her lips. Then tonight, I shall tell you the tale of the city of stars, where the souls of those who dream never die. He inclined his head, and for the first time in many years, Shahryar listened not as a ruler, but as a man seeking to be redeemed. And beyond the palace walls, the desert winds carried the sound of waves, faint, eternal, and forgiving. Chapter the 12th. The City of Stars. That night, the palace was silent, except for the whisper of the desert wind against its marble walls. The moon floated above like a silver eye, watching, waiting. Within the royal chamber, Shahryar sat upon the edge of his bed, no longer a king upon his throne, but a man weighed by memory. Scheherazade stood before him, veiled in the glow of the lanterns. Her voice was calm, her eyes luminous as the night itself. My king, she said softly, tonight's tale shall be my last. He turned toward her, a quiet ache in his chest. Must there be an end? She smiled, a smile that carried both sorrow and light. Even the stars end, my lord, but their light travels on. Shall I begin? He nodded, and she began. There once was a city, she said, that no map could find. It floated between heaven and earth, its towers carved from starlight, its streets paved with silence. The people who lived there did not speak in words, but in dreams. Each dream they shared became a lantern that shone above the world. It was said that every soul who had ever loved purely found its way to this city after death, a place where pain dissolved and memory turned into music. As she spoke, Shahryar felt the chamber fade. The walls melted into sand, and the stars outside began to shimmer as if they were listening. In that city of stars, she continued, there lived a woman who spent her days weaving stories from the light of the constellations. She wove tales of kings and wanderers, of oceans and deserts, of grief and forgiveness. One day, as she worked, a shadow fell across her loom. She looked up and saw a man standing there, a stranger whose eyes were filled with storms. "Why have you come?" she asked. The man replied, "Because I have built a kingdom from sorrow, and I wish to find peace." The woman looked upon him with kindness. "Then you must offer the stars a gift," she said. "What gift could I give to the stars?" "Your heart," she answered. "But not as a king, as a man who remembers how to love." Shahryar's eyes closed. He could see the vision in her words, the city of stars gleaming beyond the desert, the woman at her loom, her hands weaving the same golden thread that had once bound his own heart to ruin. Scheherazade's voice softened. The man knelt before the woman and said, "Teach me, for I have forgotten how." And she took his hand and placed it upon his chest. "Then listen," she said. He listened, and within him he heard not the cries of vengeance, nor the silence of guilt, but the faint beating of a forgotten song. It was the rhythm of life itself, the pulse of all those he had loved and lost. And when he wept, the stars above wept with him. The tears that fell from his eyes became rivers of light, flowing through the city, washing away its shadows. When dawn came, the man looked around and saw that the city had vanished, for it had never been a place of stone, but of the soul. It lived now within him. Scheherazade's words faded into silence. For a long while, neither spoke. The moon slipped behind the clouds, and in the stillness that followed, the king heard something new, the sound of his own heart, steady and alive. He rose slowly, approaching her. "The man in your story, he is me, is he not?" She met his gaze without fear. "He is every man who has ever lost his way, every ruler who has mistaken power for purpose, every soul that has forgotten mercy." Shahryar's voice trembled, and what became of the woman? She returned to her loom, Scheherazade said, for her work was never done. There are always new stories to weave, new hearts to awaken. He took a deep breath. "And you, Scheherazade, what will become of you?" Her smile was soft as dawn. "That, my king, is not for me to decide. It rests upon what you have become." The king turned toward the window. The first light of morning had begun to bloom across the horizon, painting the desert in hues of rose and gold. For the first time in countless years, he did not dread the sun. He turned back to her. His voice was low, yet clear. "No more deaths, no more sorrow. The curse ends today." Scheherazade bowed her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then the stories have done their work." He stepped closer, his hand trembling as he reached out, not in command, but in reverence. Scheherazade, will you remain beside me, not as my prisoner, but as the light of my days? Her eyes shone like morning stars. If my tales have taught you to love, then I am already beside you, outside. The call of birds rose for the first time in years. The city that had been silent began to stir. Windows opened, laughter returned, and the scent of life drifted through the air. The king closed his eyes and whispered, "Peace be upon this land." That night, long after the sun had set, he stood upon the palace balcony. The stars above gleamed like 1,000 lamps suspended by unseen hands. He thought of the city of stars, of its silent beauty, of the weaver and the man who sought forgiveness. He knew now that it was real, for it lived within him. Behind him, Scheherazade's laughter rang softly, and the wind carried it out into the desert, where it mingled with the eternal song of the sea. And so the curse of King Shahryar ended not with the sword, but with the telling of a tale. Epilogue: the dawn beyond the curse. Thus, the palace that had once been drowned in silence now shimmered with the hum of life once more. The fountains sang again, the market bells rang, and the people, after long years of fear, lifted their faces to the sun without trembling. Upon the royal balcony, Shahryar and Scheherazade watched the dawn unfold. No crown adorned the king's head, no guards flanked his side. The chains of vengeance had fallen away, and in their place grew the quiet strength of understanding. Scheherazade stood beside him, not as a bride of death, but as the teller of life. Her stories had become more than tales. They were stars, guiding his soul out of darkness. Each night, she had given him a fragment of light, and when the last story ended, the night itself was reborn. The king turned to her and said, "Once I thought power was my throne. Now I know it is mercy." And Scheherazade smiled, for she saw in his eyes the reflection of a new world. As the sun rose above the desert and the city bloomed with laughter, a whisper traveled on the morning wind, a whisper that would echo for 1,000 nights more. Stories can heal the hearts even kings have forgotten, and so began the eternal legend of the storyteller who saved a kingdom, not with a sword, but with the voice of wonder. Prologue: the tale yet untold. That night, as the moon climbed high above the domes of the palace, Scheherazade's voice rose once more, soft as the wind over the dunes. "My king," she said, "though my last story has ended, others yet await. For the world beyond your gates is wide, and in its sands lie tales older than kings." The king leaned forward, his eyes alight with curiosity. "And what tale comes next, wise Scheherazade?" She smiled, that secret, timeless smile that only those who carry worlds within them can wear. "It is the tale of a merchant who met his fate at the hands of a mighty jinn, a spirit born of fire and bound by vengeance. It begins not in a palace, but in the dust of the open road, where destiny walks beside those who dare to dream." The torches flickered, the desert wind sighed through the windows, and once more the kingdom held its breath as the first words of a new legend began to bloom upon Scheherazade's lips. "In the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful, there was once a merchant who rode alone through the heart of the desert." Next story in the series: the tale of the merchant and the jinn.